ICQ Podcast episode 270, Roundup for Ham Radio 2018. Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this our 270th episode of the ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, supported by our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1MRB is joined by Leslie, Golf 0 Charlie India Bravo, Edmund, Mike 0 Mike November Golf, and Bill, November 3 Juliet India X-Ray, to discuss latest amateur ham radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the Newseum Brief, and this episode's feature covers interviews from the Ham Radio 2018 show that we recently attended with the RSGB, Elecraft, BHI, SDR Play, and QRP Labs. Well, as always, we'd like to thank the donations that we receive at the top of the show, help keep the show advert free. And this episode, no one-off donations, so our monthly and annual subscription donors, we thank you very much for providing us with debates to pay our way. As always, please consider us by visiting www.icqpodcast.com/donate, where anything you send our way is always greatly appreciated. Well, now we join Martin, Leslie, Edmund, and Bill to discuss the latest amateur ham radio news, including the FCC proposed manufacturer fine and could a new entry exam boost activity on the VHF and UHF bands. Hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to this news roundtable for episode 270 of the ICQ podcast. 270 guys. God, we're knocking them out quick now, aren't we? And we're getting close to our 10th birthday. Yeah. Tonight I have Mr. Bill Barnes N3JIX with us. Hi, Bill.
Hello, everybody. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Bill. I have your partner in crime tonight as well, Mr. Leslie Butterfield G0CIB.
Partner in crime? I'm innocent, I tell you. Good evening, Martin.
No, in your case, you're guilty until proven innocent.
Thank you so much.
Love you. And probably putting a more controlled environment into this, we have Mr. Edmund Spicer M0MNG. Hi, Edmund.
Yes, good evening, Martin. Good evening, everybody. Don't bet on it.
Well, we're hoping. And unfortunately, right at the last minute, we had Matthew Nasser with us, M0NJX. Unfortunately, he had to duck out. His microphone settings had gone all awry in his computer and was creating all sorts of havoc and bad noises. So, unfortunately, Matt's not with us tonight. It was probably an upgrade or a Skype upgrade or a Windows upgrade that's changed a couple of settings, and we couldn't suss it quick enough. So Matt will be back with us again at some point in time. Right, we got a few news stories tonight. The FCC proposes a £2.8 million or $1 million rather fine on a manufacturer, and these guys were making transmitters that were a higher power than they should be, and B, out of band, weren't they, Bill?
Yeah, this has been going on quite some time, I believe since 2015. They've been working with them, trying to get them to remove the products or adjust the products to, get in the proper bands and that kind of stuff. And they didn't do it. So, 2015 and 2017, as I'm here reading over it, basically they identified 65 AV transmitters that were capable of, that were marketed as, transmitting within the amateur radio bands, and at least 12 of them could operate out of band, which I think this is the real rub here. 12 of the 65 could actually transmit on frequencies set aside for important federal agency use, quote, such as by the Federal Aviation Administration for Aeronautical Radar Systems. Yeah. Plus, they're 1 watt, 1.5 watt, 2 watts. Well, they're anything over a watt's too powerful. You're at right there. So. Whole bunch of stuff here on this notice that came out, this public notice about the fine being levied, but it's we're missing some of the backstory here of what they talked and what they worked with and, go from there. But they didn't comply, therefore they got fined. So it's unfortunate, but that's what happened here.
Yeah. Well, they say if you don't comply with the authorities, they will get your wrist slapped, won't you, Leslie?
Well, I've just been reading. I've been reading through this story, and look, if the authorities pull you up on something, you sort of, oh, sorry, officer, I didn't know about that, and you eat a bit of humble pie, and you change. If you ignore it and carry on marketing the stuff, and we can only go by what the information is supplied in the article. If you carry on, and they're going to, it's no longer, you shouldn't be doing this, please detest, it will be a heavy fine. And it's not something that's just happened overnight. It may sound a bit harsh, but I really haven't got much sympathy for them. You should have actually listened in the first place, guys.
There you go. What's your thoughts on this one, Edmund?
Well, I agree with what's been said already. When I saw the news story, my immediate reaction was to look around the room and see how many pieces of amateur radio gear I've got that are also capable of transmitting outside of amateur bands. And I thought, I hope that means that nothing I own will get clamped down on. But as has already been pointed out, it's the excessive power levels as well, and the frequency clash with other very important services. So yes, as Leslie said, if they were warned and they chose to do nothing about it, then it's very hard to have sympathy, really, isn't it?
Can I just sort of interject here? Yes, there is a power level. Yes, there is a frequency, but radio amateurs know the rules of the road. We know where we can use higher power and where we can't. And so most of the time, people are pretty sensible about it. If you ignore it, this is what happens.
Yeah. It's effectively, as you say, us amateurs are trained, and we know what frequencies we can use. We know we can modify equipment, and we can do all sorts of things, but we still have to remain within band and within the power limits set by the the authorities. But if you're selling this to people that are not necessarily licensed, don't understand the regulations, believe these to be license free, that's where your problem starts. And it's kind of like, you wouldn't take Ferrari to court for saying your car goes too fast. If you buy a Ferrari, it goes fast, but you have to drive it at the speed limit. If there's a 30 mile an hour speed limit, it's no good saying, officer, I'm terribly sorry, my car won't do under 50 mile an hour, because that won't wash.
Yeah, but very similar. Yeah, very analogous. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get down to a kind of analogy, but yeah, if you've got one of these things, you've got to work within the power limit and the frequencies you're allowed to. And potentially, I would suggest you probably have to be an amateur to be able to use them anyway in the frequencies that they were talking about. So, yeah. So, if they didn't listen, it's their own fault. End of. Thanks, guys. And
well, just one last thing on that. They did put on notices on the website that you can't use this in the United States, but you could still buy it and ship it to the United States. So just putting that notice on the website isn't the same thing as prohibiting it from being sold here. So.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if it's a company external to the US. They can impose a fine of 2.8 million. Are they going to be able to collect it?
I actually ordered a battery from them, and mine came in from Australia, so I believe they are internationally based. For whatever reason, I got this box from Australia, and it turned out to be my battery.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, let's say a lot of companies now are international, but there you go. Right, moving on. Our next story, a gentleman threw a great title, The Great FT8 Debate. And Bill started to yawn because he's been using it for the best part of a year. But the gentleman, M0BLF, wrote a blog post. That's Dominic Smith, wrote a blog post and kind of. But you were saying, we'll let you go again first, Bill, because you were saying some of the things you've been doing on FT8.
Yeah, the running joke I have now is I'm starting to call it FT Stupid 8 because I don't know why I'm using it. Because it's just okay. You hear a station, you double click on them, and then it works them, and then you pick another station, and so it's one of those things that's like I kind of get it, but I kind of don't get it some days. So some days I'm in the mood, some days I'm not in the mood, and that is really what Dom had in his article, basically about hey, you start off on this, and you're so impressed that you're getting these amazingly weak signals, and you're working stations, and you're bang go, and then you're like, well, so it's a good blog post, and I encourage anyone that's interested in FT8 to check it out. I mean, one of the quotes they had in there that I agree with is, you might argue. This is his quote, by the way. You might argue the same is true of rubber stamp, sideband at CW contacts. He's referencing the 5.9 next kind of contacts that we get a lot of times. Continuing with his quote, to some extent, yes, but you still have some variability in what the operator has sent, any accents in speech, or any quirks of the Morse rhythm and spacing. In comparison, FT8 is clinical. End quote. And I think that is just the best definition or blurb that I can give anyone is, yes, FT8 is very clinical, machine driven, just kind of go thing. So this article gave me a lot to think about as I was reading about it. And the joke about it was like you sent out the list, and I was reading the articles while I was working FT8 10 meter FT8 the other night. So I don't know. I'm a bad person, I guess.
No. It's an interesting mode, and you've had more experience than the four of us, Sam. But you were saying you had a good contact on 6 meters with FT8 the other day, didn't you?
No, I had a busted contact on 6 meters.
All right.
I did work a few stations on 6, but they were in a zone of closeness that didn't really surprise me. But so I jump online, I'm checking the social media and stuff, and I see somebody post, hey, I'm on 6s open on FT8, East Coast, West Coast, a couple guys are working, in their Europe. So I, go into the radio room, turn everything on, get on 6, and sure enough, I can hear West Coast 6 land stations with grid squares that are like Arizona, some parts of California. I think the one grid square is like, I looked it up, was like Nevada, so I'm like, oh, good, great. Start working them, call back, band fades out, or the, whatever skip tropo sporadic E I was using, moved. And then I couldn't get them anymore. So I never actually finished a QSO in 45 seconds or less. So that tells you how sporadic 6 meters has been around here. But I have been seeing a lot of people who have been working, like I said, East Coast to West Coast, or East Coast across the pond. I saw Jim N2ADV had a M0 station the other night on 6, which is kind of surprising. So that's pretty neat.
That's a good one. Edmund, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I read this article before I knew it was going to be mentioned in the News Roundtable, and I'm very glad it has been mentioned, and I would certainly encourage everybody to read it, irrespective of where you stand in the merits or otherwise of FT8. I am more or less on the fence myself. I've never used FT8 myself. I have seen it done. I saw a demonstration at the HMS Belfast when I visited a couple of months ago. And if I was desperate to have an FT8 contact, I'm sure I could cobble together my laptop and my transceiver. So I'm sort of ambivalent, really, although I think I do lean slightly towards the it's not real amateur radio side of the debate rather than the it's the best thing ever side of the debate. But yeah, if the quotation from the article that I hadn't thought of which I think is really good, is the comment about genuine signal reports, because you're 5 and 9 when you're clearly not. Now go away and let me talk to somebody else type contact. That's always been a bugbear of mine. So the observation that the author has made about at least this mode, whatever else is wrong with it, the one thing it's got going for it is it does give genuine signal reports, a signal to noise ratio. I hadn't thought about that, and I think that is a really, really good point. So read the article with an open mind, whatever your views are, and it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I heard Leslie laugh in the background part the way through there. So I'm going to ask the loaded question then, Leslie. Is it real radio in your opinion?
I'm just chuckling in the background, bringing SSB, that was never real radio. And they really should never have moved on from CW. You keep to proper radio, not SSB. You just change the things around, and 50 years down the later, the argument's exactly the same. Look, guys, it's a different mode, and radio amateurs experiment, and this is one of these things that have come out, and a couple of years down the line, it'll be something else. I don't have any problems at all. It's just, it's all part of the mix. It's all part of the mix. One thing I do agree with you, though, is the 5 and 9 report. Yeah, it's to put it bluntly, it's always been subjective nonsense. S meters aren't calibrated. They're done by different manufacturers. They've got different values. And what you need is a calibration, some sort of calibration box to say, yeah, that's what it is. But hey, I was just quietly chuckling in the background.
Yeah, well, at least you enjoyed it. And I will say that Tim, who usually goes with us to the Belfast from the Sutton Machine Club, and I know he's a listener, Tim does a lot of FT8 on board the HMS Belfast. So if you do get a contact, it may very well be with Tim if it's a Saturday. And we usually get sort of 30, 40 contacts in a weekend pretty easily. So, yeah, it's a fun mode. It's interesting. Let's put it that way. And I think it is real radio. So I'm not picking that fight either. Yeah. Moving on. This one could go on forever. But I might have to pull the plug at some point in time.
Hang on, where's me tin hat?
Yeah, you put your tin hat on. Trevor M5AKA, I really ought to get to meet, and I probably will at one of the rallies, because I see a lot of stuff from Trevor and he sends me stuff and vice versa. But he published an interesting post, and it said, could a new amateur level license boost VHF and UHF activity? So what he's saying is, we've got 3 levels of license in the UK. We've got foundation, intermediate and full. He's saying, could we maybe go to a 4-tier license system and have a simpler requirement that once you've passed your test, you only get 2 meters and 70 sems. That would generate some more traffic on 2 meters and 70 sems. But I really don't know. What do you think, Leslie?
Oh, you dropped me in it on this one, haven't you? I think Trevor is right to bring the subjects up. Is it the answer? I'm not sure. I think we really need to sit down and bash this one out, because there needs to be more activity on VHF and UHF. Yes, there's been decline, but that decline has partially been people. Some have left the hobby. A lot have moved on to other modes. So obviously there needs to be an increase in it. How you go about that? I mean, one of the things we did at the club was, and we use that word again, the little bow things, and they were cheap and cheerful, and got people on UHF. So that's how we got some activity on our local repeater, OY. Yeah, I think it's in the mix of the argument. And he raises some very good points. Let's see what people think.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, you're part of the world. I mean, I know this is UK, but I've kind of noticed in the UK that when everybody got given HF privileges without the Morse, when they did away with the Morse, people, including people like myself, I had what was known as I was a full licensee, but didn't do the Morse, so I wasn't supposed to go below 30 megs. And, everybody's gone waffling straight down into HF and pretty much leaving it free. Have you had any sort of similar experiences in the States, Bill?
Kinda. This is the sit down, kids, while Grandpa tells you a story of the olden days. We had 5 licenses /6 at one point: novice, tech plus, general, advanced, extra. And I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't have a positive or negative thing to say about that. It's really easy to me to explain to somebody that has no understanding of the ham radio hobby. It's like, okay, we have an entry level license, we have an intermediate level license, and we have the top level license. And the only real difference is that you get to use, more spectrum, more bandwidth. You can do more things on, as you advance. It was really hard to do that with the 5. Oh, there's a 5 tier, and well, if you start out as a novice, you only get HF. You start out as a tech, you only get VHF and up. And then if you do them both, you're a tech plus. And then if you get your 13 words per minute code and pass another test, you're general. And then you got to take the hard test, which is the advanced test. That was the hard test, by the way. That was the only one that was hard, in my opinion. And then, you get your 20 word per minute and you go take the extra test. And, that was hard, but not like the advanced. But I'm not sure changing the license structure would, actually do anything other than, make it a little more confusing to describe the hobby. I mean, one of the things that you guys do over on your side of the pond that I do like is a foundation license gets a taste of everything, just at a lower power. And I can tell you from trying to pretend I'm a QRP operator, you need to really improve your skills to work QRP versus 100 watts versus 400 watts for you guys, or a gallon and a half in the States. You really got to have some work your skills out a little bit better at the lower power levels. This whole thing could just would another license actually make a difference in that scale? I mean, if you just have another VHF and up license, would that really increase usage of the VHF bands and up? Maybe, but maybe not. I think other things are going on in the world that are actually hitting VHF and UHF activity. Case in point, FT8. Are you going to go out on the hilltop and set up a 6-meter beam and work sideband, or are you going to sit in a park or somewhere, and because of the weak signal capabilities, FT8 work the same, distant stations, I bet, lower signal, the noise ratio, this whole thing gets really complicated really quick. And I was going through and reading all the proposals, and that's why as I was reading it, I just went, eek, because it gets complicated really quick, and I'm not sure if this would actually help. Somebody mentioned earlier about activity days. I think that might work a little bit better. Getting the clubs involved, I think that might work a little bit better. I'm always shocked on contest weekends, big contest weekends, how many stations come out of the woodwork on the HF band, or they had a VHF contest over here a couple weeks ago, and I was quite a few stations were calling, not just an FT8. They were using sideband, they were using Morse, and yes, it was a 5.9 grid square kind of switch and move on, but it did bring out the activity. So as you said, as you started this, we might tend to rant and ramble on. So I'm going to turn it over at this point, because I don't think I actually have a good conclusion to share, other than it gets complicated pretty quick.
We used to have 2 licensing systems here. It was the A and the B. You wanted HF, you had to go for the full A license, and I believe it was VHF and above, it was a B license, and that was it. It was no gradual, what we have now, which is a taster, if you like, to get into the hobby. And I actually think that was a very, very good. I mean, yes, there was a lot of opposition to it at the time, but I think that was a very, very good idea to get people involved in the hobby. If they liked the hobby and they were interested, it was great. If they wanted to move on, that was also fine, because that way they hadn't lost an awful lot of money. And becoming a radio amateur used to be very, very expensive indeed. I don't think it is to that extent today.
Yeah. Edmund, you've been very quiet because we haven't let you in, but what's your thought?
Well, the short answer to Trevor's question, in my opinion, is somewhere between highly unlikely and no. Do you want the longer version?
Well, everybody else has gone for the long one, mate. Why shouldn't you?
No. That's why I said I put my tin hat on,
Right, well, I'm speaking here as somebody who is very fond of VHF and UHF and the 2 meter band especially. So I would love to see more activity on there, but I honestly think if we want more activity on there, we would do better to start by turning the current foundation, intermediate and full license holders into transmitting amateurs rather than just licensed listeners, which a lot of them are at the moment. The nearest hill to me is not very high. It's it's under 100 meters above sea level. I can pretty much guarantee that if I were to wander up there with nothing more than a 2 meter handheld, without announcing on social media that I was doing it, without telling anybody where I was going, if I went up to the top, plonked myself on the calling channel, called CQ, yes, I might have to do it 2 or 3 times, but I would get somebody talking to me, and as long as I then chatted with them for a little while to make people aware that I was there, it is very likely that at the end somebody else would be waiting in the wings and so on. I mean, you saw that effect, didn't you, Martin, at the HMS Belfast? How many stations did the 2 meter FM station work?
Shed loads, mate.
Was it 34, something like that? Yeah. And that was with zero publicity beforehand that station was even going to be on the air that day, from a less than optimal location slap bang in the middle of London. So if you get yourself up a mountain and do a SOTA activation or something like that, then your coverage area is going to be enormous, isn't it, in comparison? So I think we need activity from the people we've already got. The other reason I say I don't think this would work particularly is because in certain other European countries, and I'm thinking primarily of Sweden and France here, they have had licenses, often referred to as novice licenses, that fit the description of what Trevor is proposing, and in all cases they have sooner or later withdrawn them and stopped issuing them. Now, I'm not an expert on Sweden, but France is a country that I've visited quite a lot, and I speak the language, and I have worked a few stations on 2 meters when I've been out there on holiday operating under the CEPT rules. Between about, I think, the turn of the millennium and 2012, there was a license available, and if you got it, you had a call sign that started F0, followed by 3 letters. And if you had one of those, it was referred to as a novice license. You could go on 2 meters only, not even 77s, 2 meters only, and you were limited to 10 watts at the back of the radio. Okay, you could use very efficient modes like SSB or, dare I say it, FT8, and you could whack those 10 watts into a stacked collection of beige Yargies on a massive tower to give you an ERP of several kilowatts, probably. You could do all of that, but you were at the end of the day restricted to 2 meters only. And I did some research online to try to find out why the authorities discontinued issuing that license in about 2012, and I never got a definitive answer, but the two comments that seem to come up over and over again on forums and social media platforms were, number one, I got my license, I went out and bought a handheld, I stood in my front room with a rubber duck on the top of it, I called CQ, nobody came back to me, it was rubbish, I gave up. Comment number two was, when I went to my local radio club, because I was an F0, I wasn't just looked down upon, I was looked down upon with knobs on and treated like, the scum of the earth beneath the scum of the earth, so I gave up. I know that some people out there would say that these days, M6 foundation license holders were looked down on that, but it seems like some of the F-Zeros really, really big time felt that they were being marginalised and victimised and cast out from society. So I suspect the reason that the F-Zero died out, that the administration stopped issuing it, was through lack of interest. These days, most people just go straight for the full licence, the F4, which gives them the HF privileges. So it's a legitimate question, and it was a really interesting article that Trevor wrote, but my honest opinion is if we did try it, I don't think it would work. And if we want activity on UHF and VHF, get the people who've got licenses already to actually use the flaming things rather than trying to license more people on a well, what would it be? An M4, an M7, something like that. Oh. So that's the long answer. You're glad you asked now, aren't you?
Here.
What you said reminds me of a certain English comedy sketch, but
no, don't go for extra call signs. I think the consensus of opinion here is, the only way you're going to get activity on 2 meters is to have some champions that are championing the 2 meter 77's activities. Now, that could be clubs running their nets on 2 meters or 77s, maybe having get-togethers, maybe people driving around on the 2 meters or 77s, calling frequencies in their cars rather than stuck on a repeater, or hammering repeaters. Whatever, you've got to call. And as Edmund said, if you don't call, who do you know's out there? And we've had mentioned this on a number of times. If I was to call Edmund, if he was up in London and I called him on the 2 meter calling frequency, I could have been listening to that calling frequency all afternoon and heard nothing. If I called him on the calling frequency and forgot to move from the calling frequency, half of London would be on our backs telling us to get off the calling frequency. So there are people out there listening, and Edmund's right. They do need to, put a call out now and again.
Well, I can give you a very local to home example, actually, Martin. I worked our very own Chris Howard, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel /mobile, on 2 meters because I was already talking to somebody, and Chris, who doesn't live locally to me, just happened to be driving a few miles away from my QTH at the time. He happened to be listening. He heard me on the air, and he called in. Now, if I hadn't called CQ and struck up a conversation with somebody first, I would have been oblivious to the fact that Chris was in the area, for one thing, and for a second thing, he certainly wouldn't have worked me. So activity begets activity.
Yeah. Leslie, you were going to say something?
I was going to say I like the concept of champions, people, just generating activities. That is far, far, far much better than how can I put it? Grumpy so-and-sos. That's I don't care what hobby it is. The latter just turns people off. We're here to encourage. We're here to help. We're here to assist, and that's what it should all be about.
Yeah,
Here.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we're all fairly much in agreement on this one. So I'm not going to hold it much longer. I knew that news story would probably go a long time because it is a discussion point. No, it's a discussion point.
Trevor was absolutely right to put his ideas in the arena, and I commend him for that. This is what we need: ideas in the arena. This is, great, and sort of take it from there.
Yeah, if you don't have ideas in the arena, you never move forward. So there you go. So, right, guys, moving on to the next story, and unfortunately Bill's had to duck out because he had a hard stop and we were running a little bit late due to technical differences earlier on. On the RSGB website, there was a report that said that if you wanted to extend your 4-meter band from 70 megs to 70.5, which is what we've got now, if you wanted to go from 70.5 to 71.5, they've now made it much, much easier, and you can apply for it online via the RSGB website. Edmund, you told me of a colleague of yours who spat blood over this, didn't he?
Without mentioning any names, I know of an amateur not too far away from where I live who took some considerable time and trouble filling in his, I'm not sure if it was a renewal or his application for a special research permit in order to use the 1 megahertz of spectrum between 70.5 and 71.5, and he submitted his application, I think it was 48 hours before the rules changed, when he could have just gone online, hit the button and got the NOV automatically a very short time later. And I think to say that he was slightly unhappy about that would be a bit of an understatement. So it's I would love to hear. I don't know exactly what kind of activity would be transmitted in that bit of spectrum, because the 4-meter band overall that exists already is very, very quiet, particularly outside of the sporadic E-season. Apart from a few local FM nets, I've not really heard much or many people on there at all. But if anybody's listening to this who does do innovative and interesting things using that NOV, if they'd be kind enough to video it, upload it to YouTube and send me the link, I would really, really love to see videos or write-ups of what people are actually using that 1 megahertz worth of spectrum for.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I applied for the NOV yesterday. I haven't fully read it, and I should read it, but I scanned through it quickly, and it said in Section 6, Geographic Limits and Extent, it said, the validation does not authorise the use of the station in the authorised band. And it says you're not allowed to use it on the high seas. You're not allowed to use it in any country or territory other than where it's been allocated for. Anywhere in Scotland. So Scotland, you don't get it, boys. Sorry. And equally, you're not allowed to use these extra frequencies within 40 kilometres of Scotland border, on the English-Scotland border, or within 40 kilometres of the Scottish coast. So I'm assuming if you were on an island, you might be within 40 kilometres of the coast. And maximum power is 100 watts ERP, and maximum antenna height above the ground 20 metres, maximum channel width 500 kilohertz. Looking at this, so what do you think, Leslie?
Well, I'm just like I was just listening to that and thinking, what? Yeah, I'm on that band, on the FM only section, 70.450. I'm assuming that this is sort of similar arrangement to when they had the 2 meter NOVs, that they don't really want the same as before, the same what's been going on. It's really for sort of experimental things. Yeah, it's good news. I think making it a lot simpler application online, I'm all for that. Make it simple. Trying to fill out certain forms on licenses can be a bit of a pain. I'm all for doing things online. It makes life so much easier.
Yeah. Well, it does make it easier. And I was talking to Martin Rothwell on the radio actually this morning about this. And his first excitement was, oh, great, if we get 1.5 megs of allocation there, that means somebody can put a repeater in. We can have repeaters on 4 meters.
No, that's not my understanding at all. It's not the same before. It's really for my understanding. It's for experimental.
Yeah. But if at the end of the experiment they decide to give us more allocation,
yeah, foot in the door, and you know, just try. Well, we try this, don't we?
Yeah.
We get an allocation, and then 10 years down the line, it becomes a full allocation. Yeah, the hobby tries to do that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, I remember an amateur not living a million miles from me, and I think he's a listener as well. At one point in time, was trying to get a 70 meg repeater on air, a 4 meter repeater on air, and what he was going to do was you transmitted in the 4 meter band, but you listened on a PMR frequency. A couple of megs up or so you could. And he was going to get a PMR license to allow the repeater to transmit. So yeah, interesting, but I don't think Ofcom were very happy about that one. So never mind. Anyway, us amateurs always try and find ways around things, and we're always experimenting. Our last news story, and free is always good. I found online a free book on SDR radio for engineers, a free SDR book. It's 375 pages. Unfortunately, I haven't read it cover to cover because I've only recently downloaded it. You download it as a PDF file, and it looks interesting. Ooh. If somebody wants to know about SDR, this could be a good place to start. What do you think, Leslie?
I've just clicked on the link and it downloaded it automatically to my phone. Ooh, there's a lot. Well, it talks about Fourier transformer. Yeah, I missed that out at college. Very, very well. Like I said, I've literally this second downloaded it onto my phone. Yeah, it starts off fairly, and then it goes into a lot more depth. I think this is going to be a really, really interesting. I'm just sort of scanning through it now. I think this is going to be a really interesting read for anyone that's looking to wants a technical background to SDR. Wow.
Yeah.
And as it's free, I do like the word free, being born in Yorkshire.
No, we're amateurs. We all like free. Yorkshire don't come into it, mate. Oh, dear. But no, I think if you want to know more about SDR, and SDR is the coming thing, this could be a very interesting book. Edmund, have you had a look yet?
I haven't, and I suspect it would go completely over my head. I'm very much from the operating side of the hobby, as I'm sure you've realised, Martin, but I'm Sussex born and bred, and I like free as well. So even though I might well not understand very much of it, I will have a look when I get round to it, yes.
Ah, that's good news. That's good news. Let's say, well worth a look. It'll be in the show notes. That was really just a quick, informative item. So we've run a little bit long, and that concludes the news stories. Just quick whip round the table. Go on, Leslie, you go first.
Oh, what have I been getting up to? Well, I had a couple of contacts in the PW SSB 2 meter SSB contest. Just over a walk up Pole Hill, which is just down the road. It's a local hill. It's actually got 2 trig points, but that's a long story. And had a go at 2 meter sideband, barefoot with a little an ICOM 202S. A couple of contacts, really enjoyable. I wasn't going great guns or anything, but that was a pleasant day. The other things that have been occurring, well, my FF4002s are still breeding. They are accumulating. And the other thing I've been playing it with is some USB to TTL converters, because obviously you need to program various radios, bits and pieces. And I thought, well, instead of buying these leads off eBay, can I make them? And you can actually buy the module the USB module, and then solder the leads on to whatever radio you want. I haven't quite mastered CAT. I think it's CAT 3E. It's CAT contacts yet. I made a hash of those, but never mind. We're getting there. Like I said, it's all sort of on the bench at the moment, and bits of solder and bits of solder smoke. But that's what we've been doing here.
Yeah, that sounds what amateur radio is all about, mate. Sounds good. Edmund, I've seen you post a few operating pictures on the social media, but what else? What have you been up to in total?
Well, I've been using the Worthing District Amateur Radio Club call sign, which is Golf X-Ray 1 Whiskey Oscar Romeo, quite a lot over the past few weeks, primarily on VHF, with 1 or 2 contacts on 2 meters. 10 metres as well, that's almost VHF, isn't it? So I've been working a few stations around Europe on there as well, and also on the lower HF bands sometimes, so keep an ear out for that call sign. More information on qrz.com. Apart from that, well, when this podcast is released, it will be the final day of the Museums on the Air double weekender. And the first weekend has already come and gone at the time of recording. 40 metres was actually in quite good shape for Inter G this past weekend. And on some nights this week, the band has been open for contacts into the UK as well until quite late at night, so 10 o'clock in the evening and beyond. And something I've noticed is that even though some signals are very affected by deep and rapid QSB, other signals are weak, but they are steady and are there all the time. So, for example, last night, Tuesday evening, I worked at a station in Wales who was running 4 watts from a homebrew transceiver, and he was 5 and 5 for about 15 minutes non-stop. No QSB at all, weak but totally readable. So if you're listening to this on the day it's released, get onto the bands, try 40 metres, and you might very well be able to work some museum stations in the UK. But apart from that, I haven't really been doing a lot. Any photographs I take, I've been putting on Twitter. So if you search for the hashtag hash GX1WOR, you can see like a sort of running photo commentary on what I've been up to, and it mainly involves inefficient antennas, low power radios, and compromised operating. But even so, I've been getting the contacts in the log, so it's been going pretty well, Martin. And one final thing I'll mention, and then I promise I'll be quiet. Is that okay?
No, you can carry on. I don't stop you.
Thank you. You know, I mentioned earlier on about the now defunct French 2 metre only novice licence.
Yeah.
If you happen to have one of those, you've still got it and you can still use it. It's just that they're not, the administration out there is not issuing anymore. There's one guy on YouTube, Sylvian, his name is. His call sign is Fox0, Fox Victor Kilo. If you stick F0FVK into YouTube, you'll find his channel. Unfortunately, he went QRT about 2 years ago due to some localised QRM on that basically wiped out the whole of the 2 metre band. So in other words, the only frequencies he was allowed to use. And I've got a feeling it might be PLT based on what it sounds like, but that's another discussion for another day. But if you look back on all the videos that he made before he was QRM'd into oblivion, it's, if you think that 2 metres is an empty band and that real amateur radio only happens on wavelengths of 160 metres and longer, and that 2 metres is not real radio, this guy, short of doing moon bounce, has got videos on there of virtually every single method of propagation you could ever think of. Tropo, sporadic E, aircraft scatter, meteor scatter, back scatter, repeaters, echo links, satellites, you name it, he's done it. So if you listened to the bit earlier and thought, well, 2 metres, nobody uses that, do they? It's not really anything worth bothering with. You'll never talk to anybody on there. look at Sylvian's channel, Fox Zero, Fox Victor Kilo, and be seriously impressed at what can be done.
Yeah, I probably will, mate. I probably will be impressed. But I was a VHF man, and I actually, I do HF, but I must admit I do prefer VHF and UHF. So, Bill, what have you been up to radio-wise in the last 4 weeks since we saw you?
I need to blame Ed, DD5LP. He's wily and crafty, that one. I now have a Bofang RD5R DMR radio, and I now have a zoom spot on my Pi Zero running Pi Star, and I got a hotspot. The guy put out a feature, that was 4 weeks ago, something like that. And his feature talked about DMR, and he laid it out so easy. And then he sent you to the URL, which I'll say again, http://tinyurl.com/dd5lp-dmr, and filled in all the blanks. Just laid everything out, and sure enough, I got a radio, set a code plug up, worked the local DMR repeater, and got a hotspot set up and put in some talk groups, and now I'm on DMR. Darn it, Ed. You made it too easy. So the directions are good in case anybody's interested in DMR. And then the last thing I have to talk about is we had a staff meeting in New York City for part of the team. Colin was over, and him and I watched the Yankees game last week, and had a good time doing a little bit of planning, which I'm sure he's already told you about. And I threw two photos, the only two photos that not really bad, at the end of the show notes in case anybody wants to see Colin and I's made for radio faces. And that's it on my end.
Yeah, well, I know you have fun out in the ball game, and I know Colin enjoyed meeting up with you over there, Bill, in New York. You both met up in New York, so that was good. So, yeah, listen, thanks, Bill, and we'll catch you fairly soon.
All right, 7-3 is all.
7-3, Bill. So the last few things I've been up to, well, I did go to HMS Belfast last weekend, and I was there with the boys. I also did the 2-meter QRP contest with the guys at Epsom Downs, running 5 watts. They used my 7-element ZL Special again this year, and I believe they made 97 contacts. I was there for the first couple of hours. I think I made the first 20 contacts, so I started out. But unfortunately, I had to get home because we had a delivery coming that I needed to deal with, so that really spoilt that a little bit. Training course, well, my students are getting closer and closer to taking their exam. I believe it's the first Monday in July they're taking their exam, so they're getting very, very close. And that's looking good. And the last thing is, Martin Rothwell and I, if you've got Fusion and you want a link to GB3XP, Martin Rothwell and I are often on there at 0605 and to 0620 GMT, so 705 to 720 in the morning local in the UK. And we're nattering away. If anybody wants to join us, I'm sure Martin will be as happy as me to get some more contact going through that repeater. So, yeah, we're on GB3XP most mornings, so at least 4 mornings a week. So, as I say, that's pretty much what I've done. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. I'd like to thank Bill, who's unfortunately had to hard stop and had to disappear. I'd like to thank Mr. Leslie Butterfield, G0CIB.
It's been a blast, Martin, as always.
Yeah, we try to make it one, and I don't think we've done bad tonight, and I think we've had some contentious ones, Leslie, but we've still come out on top. I'd also like to thank Mr. Edmund Spicer M0MNG.
Mike November Golf, yeah, try sending that in CW. It's a great call sign. 7-3 Martin, and best wishes to everybody listening.
Yeah, 73s, mate.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the Newseum Briefing, me, Colin M6BOY. And we start off with news in Spain, where radio amateur and astronaut Pedro Duque, Kilo Charlie 5 Romeo Golf Golf or Echo Delta 4 India Sierra Sierra, has been named the Minister of Science in the new Spanish government. Pedro's first space mission was on STS-95 on the Space Shuttle Discovery in 1998, and in 2003 he spent a week on the International Space Station and had 2 Aris contacts with schools in Spain. So congratulations, Pedro, on your new position in the Spanish government. For listeners who like to take part in other regions' exams, the Thai Communications Regulator, the NBTC, has made a sample amateur radio exam available for people to try online. With the country of 60 million and having 110,000 amateur radio operators, they are growing, starting to regrow significantly after declines in recent years. So if you want to take part in this exam, there are 3 license classes: basics, that covers 100 watts on 28 megahertz and 60 watts on 144 megahertz; intermediate with 200 watts on all bands; and advanced with 1000 watts on all bands. And there are 100 questions in 90 minutes on the basic level, 100 questions in 90 minutes on the intermediate level, and 100 questions in 120 minutes on the advanced level. So we've got links here for both the Thai and the English language exam for you to try along. And let's go to icqpodcast.com to find those links. News here from the Serbia area at the prefix Z6 is illegal. A bulletin by the ITU says that call sign series can be allocated only to the administrations of the ITU member states by World Radio Communication Conferences or between radio communication conferences, or by the ITU Secretary General. In this respect, the attention of the ITU administrations is drawn to the fact that the ITU has not allocated call sign series of Z6, Zulu 6, to any of its member states. Consequently, the utilisation of call sign series Z6 by any entity without a formal allocation and consent of the ITU represents an unauthorised and illegal usage of the international numbering resource. So that's something to listen out to. And that decree was in bulletin number 1149, issued in June. Well, now we head over to our features episode, which is our completion and roundup of the interviews we conducted at Ham Radio 2018. Hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
This episode's feature is a roundup of our interviews from Ham Radio 2018 that we have outstanding. And we start our roundup with Ian Shepherd, Golf 4 Echo Victor Kilo, who's the new chairman of the RSGB, who discusses training in the RSGB and his vision of being chairman for the next 2 years of the RSGB. Well, we're joined here by Ian Shepherd, G4EVK, the new chairman of the RSGB. Congratulations on your election, and certainly looking forward to your tenure.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
So previously involved on the exam side of things for the RSGB, and I know you have to hand over those responsibilities now to the committees that are looking after those. But give us an update, though, obviously on the finish of the work you did on that as well, and what we're looking for in terms of improvement and new things for the 3 versions of the licensing going forward.
Okay, well, there's two threads. First, there was the review of the syllabus at all 3 levels, because it hadn't been looked at in entirety for probably 10 years. So we had some directions of travel given to us by Ofcom. They made comments about the applicability of the syllabus to what they thought for the issuing of licences. And of course we have to take note of what they say. They are the issuer of the licences, not us. And in particular that the intermediate exam was seen a little bit too low level nearer the foundation than the advanced. And that's certainly borne out with the results we had on two fronts. One, the pass marker, the pass level, sorry, not the mark, the pass level at intermediate was much higher than the other two levels. And secondly, people who went from intermediate to the full licence exam found it very difficult because they said that's a big jump.
Yeah.
So one of the objectives was to smooth out that transition from foundation to intermediate to full in a fairly straightforward, as a straight line as we can make it. We also looked at the number of questions and whether that could be reduced, increased or whatever, and work's still going on that because it's not directly connected with the syllabus. The other thing that's happened is that we started off 18 months ago now with launching advanced level exams online. So there was no paper involved at all. Particular advantages was there was no marking. Now that didn't happen locally for advanced level, but it did of course for intermediate and foundation level, where the invigilators had to mark the sheets to give the candidate some idea of their success or not. At advanced level, they also get the instant pass or fail at the end of the exam, and they felt that was brilliant. And we set it off first one was in Warrington, about the normal ratio of pass to unsuccessfuls. But the guy the first one to pass, the photograph's still on my telephone, he threw his hands in the air and say, "Well, hey!" And of course, what wasn't immediate, obviously, to him, there was 6 or 8 people in the room were also taking the same exam as him. So we had to then put out some guidance to the invigilators. Before you start the exam, please tell the people when they are successful, just keep it a little bit.
And this was the work Dave Wilton was doing and showing at Hamfest last year. This
Exactly
is his
right.
work, yes.
Exactly right. Dave has been the project manager for the online exam since its inception over 2 years ago now, when we first started talking to possible suppliers. In January this year, we launched the intermediate and foundation level exams. So all 3 exam levels are now available online. Same timings as before. Taken on a laptop, or it could be a desktop computer if there's one available. We still use exam centres because we find that the invigilation process, although simple, is essential. It gives people the confidence. These people, the invigilators, are a very valuable asset of the RSGB. They know how to run exams. Any problems are dealt with, and the invigilators on the online environment have the ability to modify not change the questions, but if something happens, the internet drops, for example, they can restart it. They can hold off for a while a thunderstorm or whatever, because they have special facilities, admin rights, if you like. And once they got to grips with that, and recent past, there's been lots of developments, and actually it's really robust now. We're really pleased with it. Downside is that people like to stay with what they know. So at the moment we're running at about 15% online as opposed to 85% on paper, and that is extremely expensive for the RSGB. So we're running probably the paper exams not at a loss, but it's significantly more resources required for the paper exam than they are for the online.
Now, obviously, with the change that happened in terms of the courses, etc., is there going to be new course material available, not only just for students, but also for the trainers?
For students, there will be. There are 3 new books in writing now. The advanced level book was done first because that's the one that takes the longest in training, so that was the focus of the author. It's the existing author, Alan Betts, has redone that one. The foundation book is next because that's the next biggest volume, and that will be out whenever, but that's well on the way. And the intermediate book is being rewritten into the same format as the other 2. It was slightly different before. That's a new author, and Mark Algar, the commercial manager, is running that publication process as he normally does with all books. So whilst the exam people have an input to it, it's not their direct responsibility to make it happen, because there are printing contacts, there are all sorts of things associated, and it's appropriate to leave it in the place that knows how to do it.
one of the things you notice in places like Friedrichshafen and there's obviously data, etc., is the ability to be able to take an online exam, either in a foreign country or a Handfest, etc.
Yes.
Is this type of service potentially going to come to the Newark Handfest later on this year, that amateurs could arrive and do their test online using the new systems?
Quite possibly. We are looking at, you may know that we already do an international exam for those countries that don't have the resources to do it themselves. Now, clearly the license conditions are quite different, so it's focused on the technical basic type stuff. But we offer that, and in fact there's an exam in Kenya in a few weeks' time where one candidate in Nairobi will take the exam provided by the RSGB. It's increasingly expensive and increasingly not mainstream for us to say we've really got to look at that. So our plans are to include that in the online offering that we do, and that can be sat anywhere in the world. All it needs is an internet connection. In terms of people walking in, as are done by ARRL, that's more difficult because on the online system that we use, as soon as the student is registered, they will get 2 emails. One, this is your registration number, and this is your password, which they can change, and then that will be followed very quickly with an offer which they click, and they can see an online tutorial of how the exam works, the screenshots and all that. So when they walk in the exam, it's not completely new to them. Invigilators get a similar set of emails, all automated, which tells them the PIN code. And you say, well, what's a PIN code? Well, when they're assembled in the exam room, they could have, people say, well, why couldn't they take the exam at home? What's stopping them? They don't have the PIN code. So the first thing that happens is the invigilator says, are you all logged on? We've all got you from what's called the dashboard. Yes, right, here is the PIN code for today's exam, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever it is, and then they can open the exam. So that gives us the two-way governance that we need to make sure that people are not able to get the exam until they're ready.
So obviously now leaving behind the training work you've been doing recently, you're obviously now stepping into the chairman role.
Yeah.
I suppose the big question now to ask is how do you envisage the next couple of years of being chairman of the RSGB? What are your aims? What are your goals? What are you passionate about bringing to the hobby in the RSGB in your role over the next couple of years?
Well, clearly I've still got a lot of interest in the exam area. That's been handed over to one of my fellow directors, Simone Wilson, who is keen to take it over. She actually asked if she could do it, which is great. She's taking forward work in progress, but also some new things that she's thinking of. What we've done in our first meeting, we've only had one board meeting since I took over as chair, and I decided and said to the board, I'd like you to take one strategic objective. We've got our 2022 strategy document. There's a list of objectives. They're rather high-level objectives, but I want one of each director to take over responsibility for one. Growth of the membership, continued membership. There's lots of things in there, but for the whole board to consider a whole raft of different things took a lot of time and very little focus. So this time, every director will report each month very, very quickly what has happened with their strategic objective for that last month, in the hope that some out of there will get some real golden nuggets that will say, actually, on increasing the membership of younger people, for example, which is one of our objectives, something happened over here in the Scout Association, and so has made a contact with X, and X has contacted Y, and if we were to do this, we would move it forward at pace. It's very easy then for the board to say, yes, let's put resources behind that, whatever it is, make it happen.
Yeah.
So, apart from their board liaison roles, which is looking after the committees, they also have a role to deliver on their objective in the strategy. Yeah. And I'm trying also to get them to talk to each other. We're not 7 little islands that meet once a month. We're all in this together. So we've already got 2 directors talking to the technical people, another 2 talking on something else, on the regional structure. And this is 2 directors with similar responsibilities, sharing and talking to the various different people to make it seamless. Because there were too many silos of activity, and people didn't talk to each other. They thought it was, this is mine and I'm going to keep it.
My little world, my little islands are there.
Yeah.
It's important for me to keep
It's very easy for people to slip into that. So this is an attempt to just try and dilute that a little bit.
And to finish up, a stat I was told yesterday, which I think is a fantastic stat, is with the National Radio Centre in Bletchley Park.
Yeah.
26,000 visitors last year, I was told,
Yes.
and certainly very open to club visits, etc. as well. So certainly something that I think is very good to promote to amateurs around the world visiting the UK, local amateurs, etc., club tours, etc. Certainly something to embrace and go to, isn't it?
Yes, well, Martin, that's the manager there now, has got some really good ideas. We're talking about club visits, as you mentioned, and already some have taken place. He's talking about other groups, scout groups, club groups, whatever. He's also thinking, well, maybe I could offer a semi-permanent place for people to take their practicals as part of the examination process. That would be good. In the last monthly figures that we've got, the last complete month, which is, I think, April, 4,125 visitors. That is incredibly high.
Yeah.
And it's getting bigger month by month by month.
Yeah.
So this is really, really great.
Okay, well, get along soon, guys, before you'll be queuing at the door to visit.
Yeah, indeed, and use your free voucher.
For all our RSGB members. Well, the most important thing is find out more about the RSGB. Obviously, the website rsgb.org.uk, if I remember right.
Correct, yes.
Yep. And I say congratulations on your election as chairman, and wishing you every success over the next 2 years.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ian. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time. Well, next up, Chris Howard, Mike0TCH, spoke to SDR Play about new items that were available at the show.
Okay, so we're joined by Andy from SDR Play here at Fruits Island 2018, and I believe you've got new products.
Yeah, so we have the RSP Duo. It was released at Dayton a couple of weeks ago. It's dual tuner, 14-bit SDR, and yeah, you can monitor two completely independent frequencies at the same time through a single USB 2 interface. The clock and phase synchronous, so we can do applications such as diversity, directional finding, noise cancellation, and all that kind of software will come over the next few weeks and months.
Excellent. So a real big difference then to the current one. So you've got the big difference here is it's got two tuners. You can listen to two frequencies at once. But I think what's quite exciting, you were saying to me earlier, is this diversity option. So in a future version of the software, for the SDR Uno software, which we'll look at in a second, you can actually do diversity receive and really improve the reception.
Yeah, that's right. It's it'll still operate as the other RSPs do, so we can still do 0F mode up to 10 megahertz of spectrum for a single tuner. But yeah, the ability to be able to do, like you say, diversity, noise cancelling functions with the two locked tuners. It's the amount of software development now going to increase quite significantly.
And you were saying the SDR Uno software, which is produced by SDR Play, I think you're actually involved in that, aren't you, Andy?
Yeah, I maintain and support the SDR Uno development. And so we're going to we've got some really good features coming up in the next few releases. We're going to have scanning, which has been a long time feature that people have been requesting. We're going to reconfigure Uno so that it will support third-party plugins, remote client, and also obviously all the support for the Duo for diversity as well. So it's going to change quite a lot over the next few months.
And I think you were saying also there's quite a few third-party applications that also support the SDR Play range of products, and I think you were saying there's an API or something?
Yeah, so we produce an API, fully documented API for the other products. The API will be out in the next couple of weeks for the Duo on Windows, and then we're working hard to push that out across cross-platform, so Linux, Raspberry Pi, Mac as well. So Uno uses the API, so whatever Uno it can do, people will be able to do, power accurate measurements to within a dB. The API is key really, and we're keen to make sure that it's supported across all platforms and for all of the products.
You're saying it's obviously very open then, so you're actually very happy and very comfortable to allow other companies to develop software, and there's a real community, I think, around this product range.
I think it's important that people can use a fully documented API that supports all the functionality of the hardware, and people can have confidence that it works. And we have an example here of some spectrum analyzer software that a gentleman called Steve Andrew in Australia has written, purely based around the RSP family, using the API, and he's doing spectrum analyzer functions, wideband sweeps, accurate power measurement. So it's we're not doing anything that the API here doesn't do. So
essentially what we're saying is people are finding uses for this product and able to develop software, and it's very open. Like I say, you're making APIs available, documenting it, and it's a real community, I think, around the thing.
Yeah, I mean that would be it's growing, and I mean we fully support the API. We help people if they have issues using it or they can't get the best out of it. We produce example code, and we really try and encourage people to write their own code around the API.
That's fantastic. And I think you're also saying STR Uno, so I think that's currently a Windows-only software, is that right?
So STR Uno is a Windows-only application. It's been in development before we got it. It's been in development for about 5 or 6 years as a commercial piece of software, and we are keen to make it cross-platform. So our aim is to ultimately, I can't give you a timeline for that. There's a lot of Windows-only stuff in there at the moment, so my goal is to move all that to cross-platform support, and then it'll be easier to make Uno cross-platform. So the goal is to make it Mac, Linux, and Windows.
That's great. So Andy, if people want more information about the product range, how would they go about getting that?
Everything's available on our website, so strplay.com. We have, like I say, we've got documentation, links to our YouTube site for videos. There's just everything you can find on there, and a link to support. So if you have questions, whether you have an RSP or you don't have an RSP, you want to find out more about them, there's a support link on there, and come through to support, and we'll help everybody that comes through.
That's great. Andy, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Next up, I chat to Graham from BHI about a new noise cancelling product he's launched at BHI. Well, we're here with Graham from BHI, and Graham, great news because we've got a new product on the market.
We have. We've got a small little audio box that probably not going to set the world alight with its technology, but it serves a purpose for solving a problem that many amateur radio enthusiasts have, plus sometimes when they purchase our audio products they have, and that is on transmit you can hear your own voice coming back. That can be caused by a number of factors. It can be a mismatched antenna, the antenna's not tuned correctly at the antenna feed point, or it could be an earth loop. So we did some research, and actually we've come up with a very simple box that's got audio isolation transformers inside. The impedance is matched for 8 ohms, mono and stereo, 10K mono and stereo, and 600 ohms. And what we found was customers were using the same power supply to power our DSP as they were to power their radio. And with a quirk that happens in some radio power supplies is when you transmit, a tiny bit of current actually develops in the earth. Yeah. And they sort of think, oh, your product's causing us RF. It's nothing to do with that product. It's simply physics. It's simply the law, So with this little box, you connect it to the extension speaker socket of your radio or transceiver. The moment you transmit, the audio is isolated via the isolation transformers and doesn't find its way into your audio, and it just solves a problem. What I would say is it's about £29-30. The simplest solution for most customers, and we say that on the data sheet, is buy a separate power supply. So it's not something we're saying, oh, buy this and spend more money. We're selling it on the basis that it will solve a solution that you've tried everything else to get rid of, which is cabling, checking your connections. So if a separate power supply doesn't sort out the ground loop, then you've definitely got RFI, and this little box called the Groundbreaker will solve your problem.
Fantastic. And the great thing as well, this is being developed obviously from feedback from customers, so obviously it's a product that people are looking for, etc. as well from there. So how easy is it to rig that up into your existing setup?
Yes, it is as a result of feedback from customers, and what we did was we trialled it on customers that literally had tried everything to get rid of the noise issue when they transmit, and what we found was they wanted to keep the BHI product, but they virtually were at the point where they were going to give it back. So having trialled it with all these customers, 100% success rate, it worked. So it simply plugs in the extension speaker socket of your transceiver, you plug your BHI unit in the other end, you have the right one that's matched to your impedance, and that's it. It's passive, there's no power, it's simple.
And as you say, so about £30 to buy this box, and obviously a website address where people can go along to make their purchase.
Yeah, that's www.bhi-ltd.com, or just type BHI Limited in Google and you'll find us.
The magic of Google gets people there somewhere, doesn't it? Well, Graham, I know it's been very successful. I know you've been very busy, to say, this weekend. So hopefully people come along, continue to enjoy your products, and great success for the future.
Thank you very much for coming to see me.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Next, we chat to Elecraft regarding their range and also a new antenna, which will be available in about 6 weeks.
So we're here at Fruit Island 2018. I'm here with Eric from Elecraft. Hi, Eric.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. So, Eric, last time we were here a year ago, we talked about your new amplifier, the Qrp 1500. How has that gone?
1500 is doing great. We just started shipping it back in February of this year, and we're fully ramped up in production now. I have a large backlog. We had a lot of orders, which was fantastic, of course, and we're catching up with that now. I should be actually pretty much caught up with our backlog over the next 1 to 2 months. Right now it's about an 8-week lead time, but that's coming down very quickly. So as for new orders, and as we get that caught up with, I'll have it under 3 to 4 weeks, and then hopefully almost a stock situation in the next 2 to 3 months. So
that's good. So it's popular then.
Oh yeah, very popular. It's kept us very busy. It's been gratifying.
Excellent. And so in terms of other ranges, I've also got the K line, which is, I guess, for your contests and your day expeditions, and you've also got the KX line, which I think is for the kind of the more portable operations. How are those two lines going?
Oh, fantastic. We have tens of thousands of those combined between the two radios. Actually, each radio group has that more than that. We, of course, the K3 and the K line is the K3. The P3 pan adapter, which is basically a direct sampling SDR in itself, and also the KPA 500 amplifier. Of course, now we've introduced the KPA 1500 you just mentioned, so that's part of the K line too. You can choose bigger or smaller, and that's a full 1500 watt solid state amp, as we've discussed before. That makes your high performance, super top of the charts HF station through 6 meters. The KX line, X for extreme, like extreme sports, you can take it portable or use it at home. The KX3 radio, which is right behind us on the chart, was the first one we did, and that was a huge success. As we're still shipping those, both the KX3 and KX2. And the KX3 covers 160 through 10 meters, fully portable or as a home station. We have a 100 watt amplifier, the KX PA100, and the PX3 pan adapter, same display as the P3. And so you have a whole home station, and then you can pick up just the KX3 and go portable or mobile with that.
Yeah, I heard that. People actually, maybe not going for the full, premier top of the line K range, but actually, modularly sort of buying the individual parts with the KX range and building it. And then also, like you said, they can pick it up, stick it in the bag, and go off to the hills and do work some SOTA.
Yeah, we have a lot of SOTA people using both the KX3s, and of course, when we shrunk it down because we had even more requests to make it smaller, to the KX2, which in both radios have fully self-containment batteries inside and auto-tuner options, so you can use a random wire or any simple antenna and quickly get on the air. In the case of the KX2, we dropped 160 meters and 6 meters off to get the size down. But we did some other improvements on it. We actually went to some newer batteries, lithium-ion batteries that you can put inside. So you have a nice lightweight and a whole weekend operating station on the KX2.
And I heard earlier you've now got a thing called a shack in a pack, which I think you've got one here.
Or a shack in a box. Actually, this is a shack in a box.
Okay.
And though it's more of a padded bag, but it seems to work better from that standpoint. But the KX2 in this one just fits in. I'll pull some of these out of the way here. Basically, the idea was to have, you can buy it individually, of course. We've been selling the bag for a little while.
Yeah.
But basically, the KX2 fits in here along with any accessory you need, including microphone, extra battery, your wire, whatever you might want to be carrying for accessories with you.
Yeah.
We sell it in a standard configuration that comes with the KX2, a battery, microphone, and so on. You can add the CW key if you want, and some accessories in terms of antenna adapters. And that actually, you can take the whole thing, flip it up. Actually, I have this down here, and zip it up. And this is my, this actually is my unit. This is my grab and go.
Wow. That's an entire amateur radio station in the bag.
Antenna station you can set up and be on the park bench or go on a SOTA trip and wherever you want, and that's all set to go. So it's nice. It's also for emergency stuff. You can keep that with you. So
I think things like national parks on the air, that's its ideal, isn't it?
Yeah, for national parks on the air was a huge success both for KX2 and KX3. So that's done very well for us. One neat feature with both the KX2 and KX3, actually on-off power, is we have 2-button press, so it can't easily be turned on inside your bag or so on. So you push these two and it turns it on and off. A lot of forethought in that. By the way, both the KX3 and KX2 are full direct SDRs. They go basically baseband and then into the analog to digital converters. So all of the filtering on the KX2, for instance, is provided by the DSP.
So we've got other manufacturers that are just bringing out SDR technology now, and this has actually been around for a while.
This is SDR with knobs. So we sort of hide the fact that it's an SDR from a user interface standpoint. This can be a little bit simpler. Of course, you don't want to take a whole computer with you if you're doing SOTA or something like that. But this allows you to get the same level of performance from the SDR. And we actually add little things, especially in the KX3, to even push the performance further. So the KX3 shows up very close to the K3 on the performance chart.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And then also, Eric, you mentioned about you now got a new aerial that's sort of going to hit the market fairly soon.
This is a fun antenna. I'll show this in a second. If you don't have room for like a coil of wire to set it up, or the space wherever you are, we came out with the AX1, which is a small portable antenna. It's packaged up here small enough so it'll fit inside the bag. But it's a simple loaded whip antenna with a switchable loading coil on it that you can switch basically. I won't hit you with that there, sorry about that. It also has to be a weapon, but it's basically a switchable 17 meter, 20 meter, and then also 15 meters with our auto tuner antenna that mounts on the side of actually any radio, but certainly the KX2, KX3. If I set the KX2 up on a table, let me move this out of the way here. I can actually operate on a simple table with this here, and I have a right angle BNC here. I have a little adapter that also creates like a little tripod legs to stabilize it, like that there. And then that clips on to the side of the right angle connector. And I put it in the radio, just a BNC on the side of this radio. And I adjust the legs for the proper height. Tighten it down, and you're ready to go on the air.
And I like the fact you've got the little stand there, because obviously that's taking stress off the BNC socket.
That makes it stable for the BNC, and of course BNC right angle adapters can rotate back and forth, so this gives you the stability.
That stability, so you don't get too many back to the factory to get fixed with broken off sockets and things.
Sure.
Excellent, okay.
This is a short antenna, but for 20 meters, 17 and 15 meters, it's efficient enough. For instance, just sitting at my coffee table on the coast of California, we can talk to stations on the West Coast, on the Pacific, both on CW and sideband. And of course, longer wire antenna is going to work better if you have the space and time to put it up. But from being able to quickly operate, or even an emergency situation, for short range stuff, you could use that too.
So this is just sort of parks on the air park bench, sit down, you can be up in 5 minutes and on the air.
You can be on the air right away with that. I use it in hotel rooms sometimes. Some of the newer hotels, the windows don't open, so I can put the radio and the antenna right up next to the window and operate.
And when is this like to be available for sale?
We're actually putting this in production now. The couple of long lead time machined parts for these little pieces on the top are about 6 to 8 weeks out. So right about that time frame after the show here, we'll probably start taking orders before that, but we'll start shipping in about that time frame.
That's cool. So Eric, people want more information about the product range of Elecraft.
Okay. Well, product range of Elecraft. Of course, we have local distributors in some of the countries here in Europe. QRP Project here in Germany, who also sells our high power amplifiers, and then we've got Lutz in Switzerland. We've got Waters and Stanton in the UK, and also Color Bianconi in Italy. But you can also go to the elecraft.com webpage, and all of our manuals and information is there. We'll just be putting up the information on the AX1 in the next week, so you'll see our data sheet up there and all that information on it. And of course, you have the information on the KX2, KX3.
So you've got the full network of dealers around the world and to help people to enjoy these products?
Yes, we do. Primarily in Europe, some regional countries, and then actually in Japan also. Okay. But that's in parallel. We sell direct everywhere in the world, so the customer can make the decision which level they want to have. We will give full support to anyone anywhere in the world, though, via email, telephone, even from the factory. So you can always get to the people that here that know what's going on. They're very good here. We actually have a local repair depot in Italy too. Okay. So people can send it here and not have to go past customs and stuff in many cases. And if you're inside the European community, it's out of Bologna, Italy. He's been with us for a number of years, very good. Also sells for us down there. Carlo does a great job. And also we have, and also the dealers up, for instance, in the UK and Germany also do some repair too.
Eric, that's great. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you next year.
Fantastic. Good seeing you again too. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
And so we wrap up the feature with a chat with Hans Summers from QRP Labs, and we ask him what goes into making a kit for the amateur radio market. Okay, well, we're here with Hans, G0UPL from QRP Labs, a very popular kit you've been making, and it's a great success for you in terms of numbers you sold, Hans.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this was for the kit project for the Buildathon for the IOTA 2017 summer camp hosted by RSGB in UK last year. So then 21st of August it went on general sale. As you know, I spoke to ICQ podcast in Newark end of September. So since the launch on the 21st of August, we've sold almost 5,000 of these kits. So it's been really, really busy.
A phenomenal.
I'm thinking I'm about 10 years older now than I was a year ago last time we met.
And I know certainly one of the things that we saw when we looked at the kits last year was the phenomenal build quality as well. Right. You know, the part component quality, etc. And I say such a high quality kit. And certainly even here at Friedrich Sharp, we're seeing loads again leave the table sort of thing as well. So really, is a big success to the market, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the PCB is double-sided, through-hole plated, silk-screened. It's a professional quality PCB. The components are all good quality. You know, we get samples first and test everything before putting them into the production. The manual gets a lot of great feedback. This is 141 pages. People are saying it's the best manual they've seen in decades and decades of kit building, including Heath kits. So the manual gets very good feedback. So yeah, I mean, people really appreciate the quality and the price.
And of course, all those manuals are available on the website. People can download them, etc. when they're building the kits from there.
Yeah, I do not supply a printed version. I wouldn't be able to do that for the price. But there's also a German translation, and from time to time people contribute translations, so that goes on the website too. It's useful.
Fantastic. Yeah. So the community is helping out as well with the translation, which is great. What goes into actually building a kit for the amateur radio market? Obviously, in terms of the design process, etc. I mean, what just to talk to the vague process of when you're thinking about putting a kit together. What actually you do in part of that to bring it to someone like Friedrich Sharp here to actually obviously sell to the market?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing you need to do is understand what do people want, right? You have to design a kit that people are going to want to use and buy. That is the difficult part because no one tells you that, right? And so in the case of the QCX, it was a proposal I wrote for the RSGB for the Buildathon for the IOTA summer camp, and I wanted to build a CW transceiver that was both high performance and low cost and easy enough that a group of young people with varying abilities would be able to construct it in a limited time scale and with limited equipment. So once you've got an idea of what you want to do, then you can start. So I start with a prototype, usually a messy bunch of wires, and I try to look first also at what components are available, what components I'm going to put into it for low cost, high performance. Then you go through several stages of prototyping. There's a lot of board houses now which produce PCBs at quite low cost. You go through several iterations of building the boards, fixing the mistakes, round and round. I usually finish the hardware first and then spend the last month or so on the firmware while the hardware is being manufactured. And then last of all the printed documentation, because that's something that's in email form anyway, so it's easy like that. So really it's first deciding what you want to do and then starting on the designing to achieve that best cost and best performance. Usually as I go along, I come up with some additional ideas that could be put into it. So this has a whisper beacon, for example, and it's just a bonus feature with a GPS interface that wasn't in the original idea. But you think, as you go along, well, I could add that, and there will be no extra hardware, but it will add extra functionality.
And then that becomes V2 or V3 or a product.
No, you put that in the original one, but you would be able to, sometimes do later versions. But this, in this case, was in the original one. And then things like the test equipment, that was also a later idea. So it's got a built-in frequency counter, signal generator, DVM, and RF power meter. And how that came about was because I had this picture of 20 young people sitting in a room with very few instructors and very little test equipment, and you getting to the point in manuals where it normally says, okay, use your signal generator and inject a signal, and they won't have all of that there. And so I decided to, from that, build all of that into the kit. So I think the process of producing a kit is an evolutionary sort of design. You come up with ideas as you go of what you could incorporate. It's always a balance, so you're always trying to balance cost, performance, features, board size. You leave out some things inevitably. So this doesn't have AGC, for example. That was left out for the sake of cost. So whether or not you need AGC and CW people debate that. I've found I don't, but some people do.
Exactly. Well, to be very honest, fact is you really need to come and see Hands at one of these shows. Have a look at the kits, have a look at the quality. But to be honest, guys, it's difficult to get to. The queues are long back off your table all the time. It's always very difficult.
Sorry, you have to wait so long.
We have to wait, but it's worth waiting for. But of course, the other option is to go to your website and order for your website. So the website address that everyone know about is?
It's qrp-labs.com.
Okay, and the hyphen's obviously important. qrp-labs.com.
The reason for the hyphen is that when you try and reserve a domain, some domains have like $2,000 cost for the domain name, and QRP Labs was one of those without the hyphen. Yeah. So I put the hyphen in, and it became $10 suddenly. And at that time, it was much earlier in the QRP Labs history, and so the thing hadn't grown as big as it now is, and so it was important to keep the costs down.
Wonderful. Well, I can see here a queue of customers lined up here, so I'm going to wish you continued success, and thanks a lot for your time as always, and we hope to catch up with you soon, and who knows what comes next for QRP Labs.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
I've got several new things in development, so they'll come out later this year perhaps and start coming out. So thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Fantastic. You too. We look forward to it. Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed our roundup from the Free Harvard Ham Radio 2018 show. Certainly it was a great show that myself, Ed, DD5 Lima Papa, and Chris, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel enjoyed as ourselves there in Germany. The next year's event is on a couple of weeks later. In mid to late June, if I remember right. I can't remember the exact dates off the top of my head, but on around about that time. So certainly anyone in Europe should seriously consider attending the show and certainly enjoying what's going on there. Well, as always, we'd like to point you in the direction of our Facebook group. Look at ICQ Podcast on Facebook. Our Twitter handles at Colin Butler and at M1MRB. Check us out on LinkedIn, and of course the ICQ Podcast website, where you can check us out there and see the latest news, etc. going on. If you've not already done so, sign up for the e-newsletter, and that will certainly get you in touch with the latest news that's going on. You can help support the show like our monthly and annual subscription donors by visiting icqpodcast.com/donate. Where you send our way is always greatly appreciated. While we're talking about things you can do as well, you can also check out the videos from the interviews we did at Ham Radio 2018 by going to youtube.com/ICQ podcast. And again, subscribe there to keep up to date with the latest videos that we're releasing over the year when we go to events and shows, etc. to supplement what we do. Well, Dad, I think that just about wraps up most of our notices from things from the angle there. As I say, I think it's just planning stage now for our next event that we're going to, which is the UK Hamfest. We've got quite a good, sizable team going up to that show again this year, don't we?
Yeah, we certainly have, Colin. And I seen the videos now, and they all look fun from Friedrichshafen. The Hamfest we're looking forward to. I'm still trying to convince Matthew to come, so there might be 6 of us at the National Hamfest, but there's certainly going to be 50% of the ICQ presenters at the UK National Hamfest this year, so that'll be fun. And we are very, very busy at the moment, but we still managed to get them out there, Colin, and 270. It's frightening, isn't it?
Exactly, and look, little special episode as well just slipped into the mix as well. See, we're very good to people. We're very good, but no, there you go, guys. As we've always said, we've got something to do and something to say. We'd publish away there, so I hope you appreciate the extra episode. As I say, in just so we got the content out from Ham Radio 2018 to you promptly. Well, just last thing to do is to thank our roundtable participants that joined you there, Dad. So we had Leslie, Golf 0, Charlie, India Bravo, Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf, and Bill November 3, Juliet India X-Ray. Thanks a lot there for joining us on the roundtable. What else we got on the list here? We've done that. Oh, most important thing here now. Time to get the catalogue and maybe have a rummage in the cupboard and see what you can find.
I certainly will. She'll be in a minute, Mrs. B. And we will make her a cup of tea. I'm trying to convince her to go to a couple of rallies with me in the UK. So, guys, you might meet her, but she's warning you, she don't take prisoners, is she, Colin?
What do you mean? She gives hugs and kisses to everybody.
Only if she likes you.
Exactly. Well, look, guys, we'll do this all again in a fortnight's time, and continue keeping in touch, and hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah, 73s, guys.
73s.